right, so we back up in this thing. We talking about tariffs, tariffs on U.S. goods, tariffs on Chinese goods. Everybody getting taxed.
Welcome back to CBS News 24/7. So let's go deeper on President Donald Trump's proposed tariffs today. 25% on all steel and aluminum imports into the United States, including from Canada and Mexico. So let's bring in CBS News business contributor Javier David. Javier, nice to have you with us on the stream once again. The president believes these tariffs will help U.S. steel producers. What's the logic here?
Well, the logic is you're trying to prevent, this is a long-standing problem, the idea that companies or countries rather will sort of quote-unquote dump cheaper goods into the United States. So the best way to avoid that is to make those goods more expensive and force U.S. producers to use U.S.-made goods. Now, the problem with that is these things that we get from overseas sometimes just are cheaper and more cost-effective to import. And using U.S. steel or U.S.-made exclusively products is sometimes easier said than done. So the president's idea is, hey, let's make it more expensive for these countries to drop these things or these particular goods or services into our country, and therefore will force American producers to do more with American goods.
Okay, so Trump also pledged to announce these so-called reciprocal tariffs this week. We're hearing a lot about reciprocal tariffs. So is it an oversimplification to say that a reciprocal tariff is essentially that if a country taxes us, we just tax them right back the same amount? And then I guess my larger question is, how is this not a trade war?
Well, yeah, it is exactly what the name implies. It's reciprocity. If you charge us, we charge you, and vice versa. It is, in fact, if not by name, certainly a trade war.
It's a trade war.
Basically, the conflict is about what is coming in one country and what's going into another, how much that costs, and basically, ultimately, who pays the price. And that is, I think, ultimately what will happen is consumers will pay the price because companies that are going to be paying more will pass it along to them.
Okay, so when could consumers start seeing the impacts of this, whether good or bad?
Look, there's a lag. It won't happen right away, but I'd say within a month or so, you will see certain goods getting more expensive. I think the problem with this whole debate, whether you want to call it a trade war or a tariffs or reciprocity or whatever, is it makes it really difficult for companies to plan what they're going to charge and what they are willing to pay for certain things. So they're going to be scrambling, trying to figure it all out. So at some point, the president might decide to change his mind.
That's literally what I've been saying this whole time, is if you are a company who is trying to plan for 6 months, a year in advance for how much you're willing to spend and how much you need to sell. So we are going to buy this much product that's going to give us this many vital products to sell. That's this much revenue. So we can afford to do this, and the third. If you're telling me that I have to put more money down for taxes and for tariffs just to get my goods in to make my product, well, if it's 25%, I have to reduce my production by 25%, which means my gross income is reduced by 25%. Like, there's a lot of variables. So if we are mandating these changes within a week, within a month, you're giving people no time to plan, which I think is actually part of the processing and why it's happening this way, because it's forcing you to have to make a decision before it becomes a detriment. Like, you don't have time to think about it and decide. We have to do what's in our best interest for the long term immediately, which can, it works in your favor sometimes, other times it doesn't. It's called the art of the deal. But deals can be walked away from if the terms aren't agreed upon. And if you're forcing me to agree upon terms that don't work for me, I'm just going to come up with my own terms and do my own thing anyway. Oh, I don't know. The only reason why this is more likely to work out in a smoothed over way is because this is a lot of bread on both sides. Why will we both take an L when we both could just take smaller dubs? I'd much rather take a smaller dub than a big L. But I'm not a governmental world leader.
And roll these tariffs back. But the impact will already be felt in the system because companies will have to adjust and they will have to sort of account for what is going to cost them more and how much of that consumers are going to be forced to eat.
Of course, China is such a huge player, so I want to drill down on China just a little bit. They hit back on Trump's tariffs on Chinese goods with their own tariffs on U.S. goods taking effect today. A 15% tariff on all imports
Nobody
of
was
U.S. coal and
surprised.
liquefied natural gas. A 10% tariff on American crude oil, agricultural machinery, large engine cars. So before the election, economists said that there could be a negative effect for the U.S. consumer. When you look at all of the China tariffs on U.S. goods now in effect, where do you think the rubber is going to really hit the road first in any of those sectors?
Primarily in the energy sector, you're probably going to be paying more at the pump. You'll see it because there is, despite the fact that the United States is this massive exporter of energy now, we've really flipped the energy paradigm. At the pump will be the biggest way to see it. And also, like, we're in winter, so we're using more natural gas to the extent that that is imported, that you'll see it there as well on your bills.
Okay, so as we watch dollars and cents, we are literally watching cents today. Another headline here. The president ordering the U.S. Treasury to stop minting new pennies. Walk us through the why here.
This has been a really big debate for a while. So the short answer is it costs the U.S. Mint more to create pennies than it does to actually just
Isn't that just
use them. And
regular business knowledge? If it costs more to make something,
$80 million in
then you get off of it.
2023 producing pennies. And the big part of the reason why is we're more of a cashless society. People aren't necessarily dealing in pennies when they get them.
I know people who literally throw pennies in the trash. Literally just throw them in a trash can, dog. Like, what? That's crazy. He's saying it costs 2 cents to make something that costs 1 cent. Why would I make more of them? Like, that's just business 101. If it costs more to put it out, I'm not going to make it. I'm not going to sell it. It costs me more to try and sell it than bread.
You toss them out because they don't really amount to anything, or you put them in a jar and kind of save them for a rainy day, as the graphic is showing. So the idea is there's so little of it in circulation, and people just throw them away or kind of stick them away or hoard them. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to continue to pass this along. And we haven't even gotten into the fact that what we use to make pennies is traded on open markets, and those prices are more expensive, the commodities.
Right.
market.
It's like you're literally taking metal, chunks of metal ore, melting it down to make this, when you could make 1,000,005 other things that cost more money. You could get more money by using that same metal and turning it into a product that's going to be used. People aren't using pennies. They're not spending them. They're putting them in jars. They're throwing them away. And it's not building anything. I think we should do a penny collection and melt all the pennies down and make other products that can be sold.
And that also opened up the conversation that it's now more expensive to create a nickel than a nickel costs, too. Do you see that this could be the beginning of looking at currency in general?
Yeah, I mean, it really does sort of argue whether or not we need to rethink the whole paradigm of what are dollars and cents. Are we going to redenominate certain things? Are we just not going to use certain types of money or certain types of currency? It just, again, because we charge so much and we use plastic or the whole cashless society idea that's been bandied about, the end result is people just don't use these smaller denominations, but you're still producing them and they don't actually make them back into circulation. So what do you do about that?
Well, arguably, this headline really jumped ahead of another headline that I think a lot of people are concerned about today, and that is the fact that the president halted the work of a government agency that is meant to protect the American consumer. We're talking about the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Their mission baked right into their title. Elon Musk posted on X about the agency with a rest in peace symbol. This is super important. What's behind this?
Yeah, so the CFPB is exactly what the name implies. It is an agency that was created.
The CFPB is where you put all your fraud alerts at. When you run up a credit card and now you don't want to pay that credit card, you go and say that it was fraud, somebody else did it, they the people you be sending that report to. When you're worried about, you know what I mean, you got an account where someone said your bill was past due, but you already closed the account and it's been more than 3 months since they updated it. That's who you complain to when you need them to update the account. You feel me? Your car gets stolen and you pay off the loan, but the company just never put it in there that the loan was paid off. This is who you talk to clean your credit up.
In the last several years to protect consumers and sort of argue for their interests. They usually go after banks over fees. They go after credit cards over fees. A lot of their bailiwick has to do with making sure that the consumer is not eating a lot of charges that some view unfairly. But of course, the president and some in his camp do believe that there's been an element of overreach, that maybe this agency has a little bit too much power. It's unaccountable. They force, again, companies to act, and usually it's basically by doing a bully pulpit. So there are some virtues in what they do, and everyone wants to make sure the consumers are safe and not getting charged money that they don't necessarily have or that they shouldn't have to pay. But at the end of the day, like there's all this question, if you're looking at the government holistically, what it spends, how much power it should have, what sort of power it should mete out. The CFPB is kind of right in the crosshairs of that whole discussion.
All right, so for now, it's just a work from home situation, a work stoppage, and a reevaluate and wait and see. We appreciate so much you're talking to us today. So many headlines to keep track of. And it's only Monday.
Only Monday, y'all. It's only Monday. Welcome to another wild week of U.S. politics in 2025.